We approve the agenda.
I second.
It's been motioned and seconded. All in favor? Aye.
I
Next item is executive session.
move that we adjourn, or I move that we go into executive session to consider hiring a public officer, employee, staff member, or individual agent wherein the respective qualities of individuals are to be evaluated in order to fill a particular vacancy or need. This paragraph does not apply to filling a vacancy in the elective office or deliberations about staffing needs in general. To consider the evaluation, dismissal, or disciplining of, or to hear complaints or charges brought against a public officer, employee, staff member, or individual agent or public school student.
It's been moved. Okay, roll call.
Oh, we need a second. Second.
Oh, it's been moved in motion and seconded. Now roll call.
Chairman Kirkman,
Aye.
Simpson. Aye. Taylor.
I
Baye.
Aye. All right, we'll move into executive session. You're gonna have that memorized too. interesting. I just assumed it was park.
It's their like.
It's their land,
Yeah.
maybe that's why they came in. It's their land.
We're ready to go whenever you are.
You can't start till 6:30, but you can have it go.
Okay.
Non-government environment.
If anyone needs a help break, this is the time.
Oh my gosh, actually, I am gonna go do that.
It's a good idea. Get the wiggles out. We're gonna start 9 minutes.
I took 4, I'm sure they're not ready.
Oh, you don't have a magnet. No, we're good.
This meeting, actually.
You got it.
Mandy, what day of the week? Mondays are still the best for you? Oh, it's okay. Why don't we let you get a week on your feet?
Yeah,
And then
I
let's do that.
I'm tired, nudge me. This is my first whole day back.
You start tomorrow.
I started today,
Oh,
actually, I
today.
thought I started tomorrow, but
And tomorrow we
surprise.
tomorrow we have 4 and then the one right out of that.
Right.
Do you need any assistance?
I have someone, I may just be
So,
tiny bit late, but I'm gonna plan on it coming in the back.
Perfect.
That's okay. 'Cause
well,
it'll be
actually,
their
I don't think we
meeting
can
at-
start without you tomorrow.
Okay,
So, but what if you call in so we can get
I
in?
could do that.
Okay, so,
I think I'll be okay though, because I have someone meeting me at daycare to pick him up. So.
sorry.
No,
I just found out about,
no, I think it'll be fine, but I may have to call though. and I will.
just to get us in and then you can even drop it if you just need it.
Yeah, no problem.
Thank you. And then if something comes up, we can always figure out how you can virtually, not for the 4 o'clock though. Okay?
Yeah, no,
Okay.
no, I will get it. It was fall or die trip.
A little road rash.
It actually helped
From
the two.
Wednesday to Tuesday.
Got
combined.
Yeah.
I'm getting easier.
4 meetings.
I need to schedule another one.
Oh, God.
No, I used to. Before I give out, I'm gonna get some dates and I'm gonna talk to you before I give them to anyone.
I think that.
And just, okay.
Oh my gosh, I know, I'm sorry, I got so busy, because I've been having to go back and forth to Spokane. There was somebody looking for a drug consultant, and in that time they filled it. I know, because there's so many people kind of like in limbo, yeah, in the medical field, yeah. And a lot of drug clinics are like, tons of stuff like that, yeah, and I was like, and they were like, do you know anybody? And I was like, I know somebody, and then it was gone within moments. I was like, I totally know somebody could try to look it up. To do that. Tomorrow,
I'm just deciding.
I was glad that I was glad that we didn't have to meet on Wednesday because I leave for Spokane. And Wednesday, yeah, so I was like, oh, yeah.
Okay. So we are returning to open session at 6:30. The next item is Pledge of Allegiance. Let's start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Sorry. I'm so sorry. I'm so tired. It died. No, seriously, I literally almost threw it off.
We've heard you say it the right way before, so we know it
Thank
is.
you.
So we'd like to welcome all the guests. We have some special guests here tonight to provide us some information and some updates. Huh?
You are now.
Doesn't sound any different to me. That's why I don't know.
It does. Yeah, it does.
Okay, so welcome the guests. Let's recite, we'll go over our mission statement, our vision statement for the school district. So the mission statement is, the
mission of the Nampa School District is to ensure high levels of achievement for every student.
And our vision statement is,
Every student is fully engaged in extraordinary learning experiences, preparing for successful transition to the next stage of life.
all right. Next item on the agenda is a spotlight, and we have Eric Herringer. You are good to go.
I was just Chair Kirkman, Trustees.
Oh,
I was just gonna introduce a little bit Eric Herringer. He has been a good partner for the district. He has oversaw and managed our school bonds, and he's here tonight to provide some general information around the history of our bonds and the current status of where they are. And he's probably the most knowledgeable guy I know around bonds, so we're really fortunate that he was able to make time for us this evening.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Is there a presentation that we can pull up?
There is. I think they're working on it right now.
So we are going to give some grace to our IT folks. This is a brand new system that
Okay.
they're debuting tonight, so we just want to make sure that they have that.
Let's start. Just as long as I don't have to see myself. tax to repay that bond. So you don't have to come out of the general fund to repay the bonds. So, the good news is you get that support from the taxpayers. Bad news is that costs money, and sometimes it's hard to pass because it requires 2/3. So we have to, when we look at bond proposals, try to make them as affordable as possible to help gain support from the voters. In Idaho, we're limited to 5% of the full market value. That's your statutory debt capacity. I've got a calculation later on in the document that'll show you what your maximum amount you could ask the voters to approve, and it's more than anything that we've run in our scenarios. Again, you get, when you sell the bond, you get the money up front like a loan, you pay it back over time with the property tax monies that are levied annually. You use money, bond money, for any kind of capital project, new buildings, repairs, additions, major maintenance and upgrades, equipment, purchase land. There's a pretty broad use of what bond funds can be used for. In Idaho, we don't have any direct state match for school construction. So the state doesn't put money into bond projects for schools, up front. But what they do is there's a program called the Bond Levy Subsidy, which is school district, you go pass your bond, borrow the money, and then each year the state provides a subsidy payment to help offset what you need to levy in property tax. That's called the Bond Levy Subsidy. I'm going to describe that in more detail a little bit later. And then there's also the Idaho School Bond Guarantee. That's where the state basically is guaranteeing your bond issue. So investors know that if you don't make your bond payments, the state would come in and make those payments on your behalf, because the state has more resources, revenue, sales tax revenue, income tax revenue to support your bonds. You get a better credit rating and lower interest rates. So that's how the state helps out on school bonds. Next slide, please. So this is an election history for the district going back to 2001. And I put in also some supplemental levy election results, but a couple things on this slide. Your last bond election was 2007. And you can look at, there was basically a bond every 2 years, 2001, 2003, 2005, 2007, all around the same amount of money, about 45,000, 40 to 45 million each time, and each had a 20-year payback. And the passage rates are pretty phenomenal, all in the 70% range. Of course, we need 66.67, but really strong. There were no failures during that time period. The supplemental levy, I wanted to put that up there just so you can see what kind of has happened with passage rates. There's been a couple of where the supplementals failed. The most recent supplemental passed by a majority of 53%. But if you're looking at the supplemental results to gauge what the bond might look like, there's some work to do there to get those percentages up. I just wanted to provide those as some data points. Go to the next slide. Thanks. So this is from those 4 bond elections. This is what is left to pay. So this page looks at the district's existing bonds, and so you basically have payments that go out to 2025. This 2022 payment is being made, within this month, basically, and so that'll go down. I guess the thing to keep in mind here is that the annual levy the last 2 or 3 years has been $8 million. But you can see those bond payments are a lot higher. They're almost 15 million in 2022. I'm sorry, 13 million in 2022 and about 12 million in 2023. And the difference there, 2 things. 1, that levy equalization I talked about, the state subsidy. And 2, the district has built up some surplus in its bond fund, and it's spending those monies down as you get closer to having all your bonds paid off. We think kind of the way it looks, working with Randy Dewey, is if you continue to levy 8 million for the next 2 years, fiscal 23 and 24, then in the last year, depending on levy equalization, you might only have to levy about 700,000. So point being, you're almost you're almost debt free. You're close to having all your bonds paid off. It's a good time to be talking about what's next in terms of capital projects, because you can dovetail a new bond to start paying once these existing bonds are paid off. If you go to the next slide. So here's where talk about, and we're just looking at bonds right now, but the bond levy is the top graph here. And so you can see the last 2 years, 2021 and 2022, the levy amount to repay bonds was 8 million. Prior to that, in 2020, it was 15.5. And so it's come down pretty substantially and remain level, with the expectation that you'd certify 8 million for this next, for the current fiscal year that we're in now. Those certifications are due to the county in September. So that's not final yet, but that, I believe, is what's in your budget. The bottom is what's happened with your tax levy rate. And that property tax levy rate, we often express as a rate per thousand of market value. So as it goes down, it's a lower tax rate. It's gone from $1.14 in 2021 down to 89 cents in 2022. Same dollar amount, but because the market value has grown, tax rates come down. And then with the market value, we show preliminarily from the county for upcoming fiscal year, we should see that tax rate drop to 61 cents. There's been a lot of angst as property tax assessments went out this spring around the state, where market values have gone up on existing property 30, 35, 40%. And so there's a knee-jerk reaction that, oh, my property taxes are going to go up 30 or 40%. But that's not necessarily true, because if you're levying the same dollar amount, the rate per thousand gets adjusted down. And so, in reality, as far as the district's bonds go, if you just look at the bonds in isolation, if I'm a taxpayer in the Nampa School District, I probably am writing a smaller check for the bond this next year than I did last year, because you've had new construction. You've had market value added. It's not just revalue of existing property, but new buildings being built, added to the tax rolls, spreading out the tax, that $8 million tax burden over a broader group of taxpayers. So that's, in theory, how it should work. And depending on unless you had a major increase in market value, you should be paying a little bit less for the bonds compared to last year. Does that make sense?
Okay. It does. I know there's quite a few people, though, that will say it doesn't.
Yeah. I wish I could, it's one of those things that's hard to communicate.
It is.
Property tax is a very misunderstood process in our state. I go next one. So we talked about market value, what's driving the rate down, the increase in market value. It's been pretty stunning, not just in Nampa, but across the state, to see how much market values have gone up this last year. I'd say you're a little higher than average, at 47% increase in your taxable market value, going from 9 billion to 13.3 billion. That's on top of 28% the prior year, and then double digits the 3 years prior to that. So, I mean, the tax base is more than doubled in the last 3 years. Now, I think that's all fine and good, but if we go to the next slide, we break it down into this concept of how much of that is from the revalue of existing property, same taxpayers just, paying the same versus new construction, new buildings, new businesses. And so this chart might be a little funky to read if you are just looking at it for the first time, but what we tried to show here is, how much growth in market value occurred. So, for example, in 2023, there's a little over 4 billion increase in market value, and 93% of that increase is from the revalue of existing property. Just under 7% is from new construction. So that's great. I mean, you're getting new taxpayers added to the base, spreading the burden, but it's not, going to cut people's taxes in half. Right, it's just going to lower them a little bit. if you're levying the same dollar amount. But if you look at the average over the last 5 years, about 20% of your growth in market value has come from new construction, and 80% is from the revalue of existing property. So assessment increases.
So existing property also, you don't break it down, new sold property.
Right. No, it's just, so yeah, when the assessors go around and their job is to make sure that property is assessed at the current market value. When they've got sales data, that helps, right? But for homes that aren't selling, they're gonna do ratio studies and comparables and things like that. Okay, can I go to the next slide? So anyway, these are all things we look at when we're looking at building a bond plan for a district. One of the key things we look at is what's happened with this levy equalization. That's that subsidy from the state. The districts received $43.3 million in subsidy payments from the state since that program was created and it was created in like 2003. The first payments went out in 2005. And the key thing to keep in mind here is that the amount of subsidy is adjusted each year. The state has a formula that looks at where each district is in the state relative to the statewide average on 3 components. One is market value per support unit. So how big is your market value per kid, basically? And so if you have lower market value, you're going to get more of a subsidy. If you have high market value, less subsidy. The idea being that the state's trying to equalize the districts that have more or less ability to repay bonds. That's half of the formula. A quarter of the formula is the unemployment rate in the county versus the statewide average. The other quarter is the per capita income in the county versus the statewide average. Canyon County districts have typically received pretty high percentages, but if you look at that 2022 number, your index factor, which is what that formula does, has been going up. The higher your index factor, the lower the percentage subsidy, because it basically is, 1 minus the index factor. That percentage is the percentage you get in subsidy. So you're trending lower in subsidy and have been trending lower for the last 4 or 5 years. We'll get new numbers for 23 in about the next 2 weeks.
But it looks like it will probably stay the course for the next.
Yeah, it would be hard for me to continue because again, it's all compared to the statewide average. And because of COVID the last couple of years, those averages, and the index did some funny things just because of how different counties dealt with different, the unemployment rates in some places were a lot higher than normal, like Ada County, for example, which is a big driver in all of this because of there are more shutdowns compared to Madison County over Rexburg, where unemployment rate actually stayed low. So I wouldn't be projecting that trend to continue, but basically our projections are based on if you get the subsidy at your current level. Can I go to the next slide? Thank you. So before we get into kind of the analysis we've done on a future bond, the key takeaways I think on your existing bonds are that your bond levy has declined significantly compared to a couple, 3 years ago, right? From 15 million to 8 million. So you're levying less. The state's kicked in about $43 million to help offset the tax burden. You will be out, you'll be debt-free, if you will, in 2025. We expect you're going to levy about 8 million in the next 2 years. And then depending on how much levy equalization you get, that last year levy could be zero, but it probably, we're guessing about 700,000. So big drop. So if you think about if we run a bond now or next year, dovetailing that in and building out a plan that assumes, don't start making payments on the new bond until the old bonds are paid off. Okay, so let's get into the fun stuff, which is what is possible. The next slide, and then one after that. This is the debt capacity I talked about. So 5% of full market value. This is a different number than that taxable market value because we add back the homeowner's exemption. And that's just the way the statute's written, is we get to use full market value for making the calculation of what's the maximum amount of debt you could ask the voters to approve. And this is gonna be up, this data will be updated in about a month when we get final market value from the county, and you'll make your payment. But you're right now standing at about 570 million in debt capacity. So I'm guessing you're not gonna need more than that. But if you do, I would guess that number is gonna go up by at least 100 million when we get the new data in about a month. Okay. Next slide. So the other thing we have to think about interest rates, and a couple of years ago, interest rates were really low. And this chart looks at the kind of an index called the Geo Bond Buyer Index. So it's tracking the movement of a 20-year bond, municipal bond, tax exempt, that would be like what the school district would sell. So for the last 10 years, back to 2012 to today, there's that sweet spot when rates were really, really low for a couple of years during the pandemic. I say sweet spot because when rates are low, I'm happy because my clients are happy because we're in the business of borrowing money, and people like to borrow when the rates are low. Rates have gone up since the beginning of the year, but if you look, we're currently at around 3.3% on a 20-year interest rate, and the average over the last 10 years is 3.4%. So even though rates have gone up, and it's been a little bit of a shock how much rates have gone up, we're still right around the 10-year historical average. Now, people are paying attention to what's going on with the economy and what the Fed is doing. There's clear expectation that the Federal Reserve is going to raise interest rates through the end of the year, probably, by a full percent by the time we get to December. That is already baked into this kind of an interest rate, because this is a 20-year interest rate. And so when the bond markets are thinking, we're pretty sure the Fed's going to do this to short-term rates, overnight lending rates. Short-term rates, 1 year, 2 year, 3 year interest rates go up. The 20-year interest rates are kind of adjusting to where the market thinks the economy is going to be long-term, not just next year or the year after, but over the next 15 to 20 years. So I can't predict where rates are going to go. I can have my opinion. We know where they're at today. Most of my projections are going to include a cushion of about 0.75%. Not because I think rates are going to go up 0.75%. I just want to be a little conservative when we're running analysis going forward.
Can you lock in an interest rate?
Not today. Not until you have your bond passed.
In 90-day lock-in, 90 days wouldn't be as sufficient for us. We'd have to lock in for like 2 years or something.
Yeah.
All right.
So anyway, just keep that in mind. We're a ways out on locking interest rates, but when we're building out projections, we always are going to put some cushion in there. I go to the next slide. Bond rating. This is that credit rating. I talked about the state having a guarantee that guarantees your principal and interest payments, which makes your individual bond rating less important, but it's still important. Every district gets assigned a bond rating when we go out to the market on its own, and then we get the state, with the state guarantee, we get a AAA. So that just goes through the bond rating. Moody's is the one we use most. AAA is the highest. We can get that through the state program up to 40 million, and then it's a kind of two-tiered program. AA1 is where state guarantee is for anything over 40 million. The district is currently rated A1, so you're in that upper part of that very good category. It's not, everyone wants to be a AAA. Not everyone can be a AAA, just because that's the way the rating agencies are going to delineate based on the size of your tax base, what the economy looks like, how much debt you have. Well, one of the big things is financial performance, and 30% of the rating. And so you might be aware that the district in 2012 its bond rating was lowered to that Baa3 category with a negative outlook, so just above speculative. And that's because the challenges with the negative fund balance. And the general fund, the bond fund had money in it, but it was, that's the way the rating agencies penalize districts for financial mismanagement. And if you've been to Randy's office, he's got a nice framed document that shows being able to turn that around in about a year. So the district, I think, has a really good story to tell about being able to, get out of trouble really quick. And also, there's never any doubt in my mind that your bond payments were going to be made, and the rating agencies, I think, overshot things a little bit. I'm going on a tangent, I'm sorry. Let's go to the next slide. So here's just where districts stack up in terms of bond rating. Can you go back one? So you can kind of see Nampa's in that A1 category, you know, Twin Falls, I think, is in there. You're kind of on the cusp. I think that if you do have a bond election that, you know, comes in the next couple of years, you probably would get in that AA category, just given how much your tax base has grown and where your financials are. But we modeled everything on an A1, which is your current rating. Then the next slide is just more background on that state guarantee program, which is to say that we can still get this enhanced credit rating of AA1 up to anything over 40 million. So if you do like $100 million bond, we'll do 40 million with AAA, we'll do 60 million with the AA1. And the whole point is this just allows you to get slightly better interest rates than you would on your own.
And are those guaranteed to the term of the bond?
The interest rates, yeah. When we do bond issues for school district, they're fixed rate for the full term all the way out. We can go up to 30 years, but most districts do 20. But yeah, you get fixed
There
rate.
is no variable interest rate.
Yeah, you don't have to reset. You don't have a balloon level amortization. You do get the ability to refinance if rates go lower. You know, you can certainly do that. We've done it. All those bond elections, those original bonds were refinanced at some point to lower interest rates.
So do we choose the term, or do you guys present us with options?
We present you with options, and what I'm going to show you here shortly is what a couple options look like, and then depending on where you guys want to go next, we can run some additional options too.
Clarification, you will not be making any decision this evening because it is not an action
I
item.
was just gonna say.
Okay, so the next slide is future bond planning. So kind of wrapping up all those previous slides, just kind of try to summarize them. So we assume you're going to get the bond ratings that we can get from the state based on, and then also based on your current rating. We take current interest rates that are available now, at least, you know, when I put the presentation together in July, plus 0.75% cushion. And then, you know, your market value, preliminary market value at 13.3 billion. This assumes an election in March of 2023. It could happen after that. It could, you know, we'll talk about election dates at the end, and then the levy equalization subsidy from the state at your current level of 18.4%. Okay, next slide. So here's two scenarios. There are, you know, 100 scenarios we could run. This is a good starting point to start thinking about what size and length and impact in terms of taxes different bonds would have. So let's start from the right first. We did it. What we solved for on the right-hand side is how big of a bond could you do and have your annual payments be 8 million, right? Because your existing payments are your existing levy is 8 million. And so when that goes away, if we replaced it with an $8 million levy, what would that support? And that's 148.6 million. So let's call it 150 million. So right now, you could look at about 150 million and really be able to pay that with your existing bond payment or bond levy that is on the property tax rolls right now. And that's assuming the net payment after levy equalization. So you can look at 148.6 million par amount. So that's the principal amount. That's the amount you get for the project fund. Interest cost on that, and this is over a 25-year term, not 20, 25, spreading it out a little longer. 96 million of interest, total cost 245 million, less the subsidy from the state, 45 million. You're looking at a net cost of about 200 million over 25 years. So on an annual payment basis, just under 8 million. So we divide that 200 by 25, you're looking at about 8 million.
Are you assuming that 8 million is going to be there every year through the levy? Through a levy?
Yeah. So you've got 8 million right now. That's going to go away. Just keep levying 8 million, and now that goes to this.
But that's up to the voters, really, to see if that levy goes through, correct?
Exactly. If you don't pass anything, that you're going to levy zero. But,
Right.
If you don't pass anything before 2025.
Okay.
And then the other scenario was, let's look at 250 million as a number that, is going to take more than 8 million because it's bigger, right? 25 years, same interest rate. You can see it's going to have a net total cost of about 336 million. Divide that by 25, your annual amount of the bond payment that would need to be levied in property tax, 13.4 million. So you're levying 8 million right now, so the increase about 5,450,000. So what we're calculating there is what's the impact, if you had to increase the levy from 8 million to 13,450,000, how much more would that cost? And that's $41 per 100,000 of market value. Also known as 41 cents per thousand. You're right, this year you're going to be at 61. So you're increasing from 61 to 102. Now we can go out to 30 years. So we could run scenarios. We could run both of these scenarios and say, well, what if we did a 30-year bond? The law was changed about 5 years ago to allow school districts to run bonds that used to be 20 years was the max. Cities and counties, other public entities in Idaho can do 30-year bonds. So there was an effort to go to legislature and say, hey, let school districts go 30. So that went through. You can go to 30. A couple districts have tried to run the 30-year bond. Neither of them passed. And part of the reason is it's a longer bond's going to have more interest costs. And so there's a balance there between the affordability of the annual payment and the tax impact versus the total interest cost. It's like 30-year mortgage versus a 15-year mortgage. 15-year mortgage is going to save you a lot of interest costs in the long run, but require higher payments. Right? We've had a couple districts run 25-year bonds in the past. Twin Falls and Jerome both did 25-year bonds on their last proposals and passed. But I would say the majority of districts go with 20. So choices there. I can go to the next slide. So my key takeaways on the future bond planning are the existing bond levy of 8 million will support a new bond of about 150 million, 148.6 to be exact. That would, basically when the old bonds are paid off, we'll just move that 8 million levy to go start paying on the 448.6 million, as I showed you on the last slide. If anything, I would say that the tax burden on existing taxpayers would go down over time because of that new construction. If we're getting 20% on average each year growth in market value, not 20% growth, but if you're getting new construction, any level of new construction, you're spreading out the burden among a larger group of taxpayers. Then the $250 million bond would result in a $41 per 100,000 increase on a tax bill. Any questions?
And that 41 is looking at if we don't take into consideration new growth or new construction.
Right, that's
as well.
just-
It's just
right.
It stays the same.
That's just looking at, level annual amount, not increasing the amount because of new construction, not trying to keep the rate the same and let market value go up,
Yeah.
It's just same dollar amount. Okay, next slide. So just to give a little bit of sense, and this is looking at comparative districts in the Treasure Valley, and this is on total tax rate. This is, we're kind of moving from not just your bond, but also, what's the total rate, plant levy, supplemental levy, bond, emergency. So every district in the Treasure Valley kind of has a different mix of levies. But if you look at the total, Nampa's total for supplemental, bond, and anything else is $2.37 per thousand. That's $237 per 100,000. You're at the sort of lower end of that range in the Treasure Valley. West Ada is lower partly just because their tax base is so big. Boise is, even though it has a very big tax base, they have an operating levy that is very big. And so their tax burden is higher. And then the next slide, this is just, I'm sorry, there's another back one. No, that one. Yeah, so this is, again, this is last year. We don't have all the new tax rates for fiscal 2023 because they haven't been calculated yet. But this is at the 10 largest districts in the state by enrollment. And so I thought that was a kind of a good comparative too. And here's again at the lower end of that range for tax rate. I would say that 10, 15 years ago, you typically went more at the higher range. And part of the reason was you just didn't have as much tax base per kid. The growth has actually helped spread the tax burden over a larger base. And you've seen commercial and industrial development beyond just the rooftops that drive kids. The one problem with the district one of the problems with the district, like Nampa is no longer this type of district, but Middleton, when you're on the edges of the urban area, you end up with a lot of rooftops, a lot of kids, not a lot of tax base. So you got to build schools, but you don't quite have the tax base yet. And I would say that's kind of where Nampa was 20 years ago when all those bonds were passing. But now that you've had the growth, your tax rates are now lower. I'm gonna go a couple more slides, and I'll be out of your way here. So this is just some election data. If we go to the next slide, looking at districts have in Idaho 4 election dates that you can run a bond. It's March, May, August, November. March and August are school-only election dates. May and November you share with whatever else is going on, whether it's a city election, statewide primary, or statewide general. So what we're tracking is two things: the percentage passage rate for those with different election dates, and then that's being tracked on the left axis. So 54% of the bonds that were run in March have passed, going back to 2011. So going back more than 10 years. The right axis is looking at how many bonds were run in March. So that's where that solid orange line that goes across shows you more districts run in March than any other date, followed by August, more popular than May, and a slightly better passage rate than May. And then November's traditionally been an avoided election date, and part of the reason is that the passage rates aren't as strong. And if you look at the bottom chart, that looks at on an annual basis, same data, like what years, how many bonds pass in any given year. What I was noticing in going into 2019 was that there was sort of a trend emerging where the odd numbered years were better than the even numbered years. So you think in 2013, passage rates are up, 2014 down, 15 up, 16 down, 17 up. 18 down, and looking at 19, I'm thinking, it's hopefully going to be a good year. See some bonds pass, and a lot of districts ran in you can see in 2019 there was more bonds were run in 2019 than any other year, but only 20% passed. So something had changed, whether it's political dynamic, the property tax dynamic, not really sure. But in 2020, with COVID and the shutdowns, no bonds passed, very few run. But interestingly, in 2021, we returned to kind of that success story of odd numbered years. So it'll be 2022 so far, not great. We haven't. There's only one bond has passed, and that was Madison. We have a handful of elections going in August, but it's tough sledding because 2/3 supermajority. So, but districts will ask, what's the best month to March? What's the best election to run? Well, the data would say March. And what year? Data would say an odd number year.
There's a whole semester of analysis right there on that screen. Really taken that.
So next slide is the election dates. So this is for 2023. The thing to keep in mind here is, you got these 4 election dates: March, May, August, November. They're mandated by statute. But the filing deadlines, when you have to have the paperwork due to the county, is really important because, if you look at that in 2023, the paperwork needs to be to the county by January 23rd. And what happens is, we get in the school year, then it's Thanksgiving, then it's Christmas, and then Christmas break, and then, what it calls at the beginning, we got to run a bond. And there's just not much time to put things together if you're waiting until after the holidays. So, I would recommend any district that's thinking about a March election day should really be doing their legwork now and have a good idea of where they're heading by the 1st of December, just to allow enough time to go through the process to meet the deadlines. And then, 2024 rolls around and those election dates will get updated, but they'll look pretty similar. And one more, just one more, yeah. So this is a question that comes up about, okay, when do we pass the bond, when do we get the money, how does this all work? So this looks at a timeline for a March election. So March of 2023 election, it takes a couple, 3 months to put the paperwork together to sell the bonds. We got to put legal documents together, disclosure documents, there's a protest period on the election. The elections can be contested for up to like 40 days. So usually we wait about 40 days and then sell bonds. So we know that no one's going to challenge the election. That's about how long it takes to put all the paperwork together. So March election, you could be selling bonds in early summer, late summer. And that's when you get your money. You get it all up front, goes in the bank account, can be invested until you spend it. It's not like a drawdown. We sell the bonds, the money goes into the district's bank account, usually a separate LGIP account until it's spent. And then you can certify the levy beginning in September 2023. So when we say certified, there's one time a year where public entities, including school districts, certify, ask for, write down, collect this much in property tax. And that gets delivered to the county. The county is the tax collector. And then, so every year in September, you certify something called an L2 with your property tax levies. Then the first half tax collections due from the taxpayer in December, but the county holds on to the money and gives it to the public entities at the end of January. So we make so you get the money, first half tax collection money from the county, end of January. We make your bond payments in March. So you have time, to have the money, enough time to cash flow your payments. And then second half property tax comes in from the county. That's your revenue in July. And you have your payment, your second half payment in September. So we have payments twice a year, interest only in March, principal and interest in September. That's how bonds are set up. And the thing that we'll need to keep in mind here is if you run in March and we have this thought that we're going to move this 8 million levy that's been paying on the old bonds to the new bonds, you're going to need that 8 million in 2024. So there's a couple of ideas, and Randy Dewey brought this up, like, well, if we pass in March, what do we do about that 1 year? How do we get past 2024? Well, we got a couple ideas. You can delay the bond sale. The authorization from the taxpayers doesn't expire. So, you can get the authority to bond and wait, or you can just do a small bond, finance the immediate projects right away, and delay the first payment until 2025. We can do a bond anticipation note. There's lots of mechanisms we can do to kind of bridge that 1 year gap. And we've worked with districts that have been in the same situation where they have a bond that's going to roll off in a couple of years. And they don't want to wait until like the year before, that if they don't pass, they've lost the opportunity to, you always have the opportunity to run a bond, but the opportunity to keep your payments, like, hey, we've been paying 8 million, that's going to go away and replace with a new 8 million. Well, once it goes to zero, then you kind of have to go back up. And so we've had districts that will say, we want to have more than a couple bites at the apple. We want to run a couple of years out, and then we'll figure out how to access the money so that it minimizes the impact on the taxpayer. So we've got some mechanisms to do that depending on how you guys end up wanting to proceed and amount, timing, things like that. But that'll need to be factored into kind of the final plan. Okay, that's the last slide, other than the one that says if you have questions, you can contact us. So last slide. Oh, Randy knows how to get hold of me. Greg knows how to get hold of me. And as I said, we're happy to take the next step with you to run more analysis and figure out how to build the plan you want.
Great. Any quick questions? We're not diving into details tonight.
Yep. So this is just good information, and know how it works and how it comes together.
Yeah, it was really good information.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, it really was. For me anyways,
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, our next item on the agenda is we're going to comments. We'll have Mr. Coffey. I saw you sneak in the back door. Update, we haven't seen you for a while. Been on vacation for the summer? Or?
I had a little bit of fun, yes. I missed you all though. I tried to watch the meetings when I could. Thank you as always for giving me this opportunity to speak to you. I did submit my comments in writing. I intend to stay on that. I was on a different order though, I think, than the way they were submitted. The first thing is the excess revenue. And I just wanted to talk about how that was part of our negotiations, and at the end of the negotiations was the idea that there would be an increase in the building budgets. And so association fully supports that idea. There had been a different number, I think, than the 33 to 66, but then there was a difference in how the stipends to all the different people were paid. But we support that, getting the money to the schools to help for supplies for students and educators, and also the leadership stipends was something that was discussed. And that's obviously a challenge since the legislature eliminated leadership stipend funding. I fully believe that people should get paid for the work that they do, and so having those leadership positions paid for, I think, would be important. Superintendent search update. I have no idea what your superintendent search looks like, but I did want to take this opportunity to just put a plug in for Dr. Russell. As I said in my written comments, Dr. Russell and I have not always seen eye to eye. We've tangled over the years as the lead negotiators for our respective sides, and trying to work collaboratively, including the governor's holdback time, COVID, and all that, and Zoom meetings. And so we've had hard conversations, and still do. We don't agree on everything, but I have always felt like Dr. Russell was listening to me, wanting to understand my position, the position that I was representing and presenting, and also took the time to try and communicate as best he could what his ideas were, what his interests are, all the different things that a superintendent has to consider, which is a lot to think about all of the different components of the district. He said things to me that I still chew on and think about, and hopefully that's the same for him. Special education, I know I saw the manual is on the agenda. I started to go through over the weekend. I'm not qualified, to speak to that. I think probably I am lucky enough to be a part of the special ed community here in Nampa, to a degree anyway. You have amazing people in the special ed department from the top to the bottom. Dr. Cook is here. She was our first principal. So if I say something that like distresses you, and if I'm haranguing you or something, then I'll go back to Dr. Cook. I wouldn't be here otherwise. Yeah, like that. Right under the bus. The special education professionals that you have at all the different levels work much harder than gen ed folks. I have seen both sides. So currently I have a special ed class, but Mr. Yarborough had the wisdom to not give me a caseload last year because of my role as the president. And I thought I could probably do that. No, it would have been not great for the kids probably. It's a lot. The 5-day extra contract that we give them doesn't come close to actually representing the amount of extra work or the intensity of the extra work that is done. That's from everything from Esther Tuff's program, where they're doing 30 to 40 diaper changes a day on adult-sized children, to we have the new pod system, which is refreshing, I think, of an old idea, and obviously there's growing pains there that hopefully will be better this year. So as you think about special ed, I just wanted to let you know that I think we don't talk about that enough. We'll talk about that professionals enough and how much more work it really is. I think that some things work together to kind of hamstring the district. And one of those is the maintenance of effort issue, which is a new issue to me. I learned maybe a year or two ago that I think was supposed to act like a floor. You have to provide at least this amount of financial support, which really means people of your school district. And if you don't, then you're going to be in trouble. It ends up acting like a lid, because if you go over this, whatever your amount was 1 year, but then you go back down to the previous level, you're not going to be in trouble. So that's just a reality that I think needs addressing. And I don't know how districts, other districts deal with that. But that to me seems like a pernicious kind of cycle that really hamstrings the district to actually try new things, put resources to special education programs and ideas, because you worry that if it doesn't work out, you try something else and you're going to be in trouble on an audit. And that seems really unfortunate to me. The last thing is to thank you, the district, for giving us opportunity to present at the new hire orientations. There have been at least 2 a week, every week since the first week of July. That's a lot. And it's a great opportunity for us to get in front of folks and just, we feed them lunch, and we do a little spiel and ask them to sign up. And that is generally pretty successful for us. And then my last pitch is just to let you know that this is a weird time of year for many new educators, especially people coming out of school. They're going to have to go to work next week, but they won't get paid till the end of September. It's a weird system that does that, and that can be really hard. So this is a tradition that we're doing, other districts are doing as well. So we're going to prepare or give all the new hires at every level spaghetti dinner. So we'll put together a little bag, kind of deliver it to them in the classrooms, including some brownies that they can make. So it's just a kind of a thing to help bridge that gap of that first year. Because they'll be working, as of October or August 15th, they'll get paid till September 25th. So that's kind of another weird wrinkle, a hurdle, a burden that educators have to deal with that most folks really don't. So just want to make you aware of that. That's all I have. Happy to answer any questions that you have.
Any questions?
No.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Coffey.
Thank you.
Do we have did you grab those sign-up sheets?
Yes, I put the one in front of you.
Of course you did. Right there. So in this section, we have a spot for trustee comments and for updates. So trustees, here's your time opportunity to specifically, any comments, any updates? School starts tomorrow, next week.
Charter started.
I do have something.
Please, trustee Betty.
Yeah, I just want to thank the district, the educators, the people that show up and make a difference. There's a lot of decisions that are made that could be difficult, and somehow you guys get to carry it through. And we're really thankful for that, for what you do. We really are. We do keep in mind that this is not the things that we do here are not lightly taken. And I appreciate everyone here that takes the time. I know we have a good group of people here as trustees, and we really believe in making sure our kids get the best education they can get. And for that, we need good educators. And I think we have a good set of people out there. And people in the background, people in the, from all different areas trying to do their jobs. So I'm really thankful for that. And for carrying through some of the decisions that we make that may be difficult for you. Thank you for that. We're going to move forward, and we're going to keep doing things and that are great and that are positive for the kids. And we know we can't please everybody, and that's not what we're here for. We're here for the kids. So thank you so much for what you do for them. And this is a new year, so we know things are going to get hectic for you. But thank you so much.
Appreciate that. All right, next in this section is public comments. We have one person signed up for public comment, Sebastian Griffin. This is general public comment, so you can comment on anything you would like, as long as it's nice.
A citizen's bonus for living in Nampa. No. My name is Sebastian Griffin. I'm a resident of Zone 2, represented by Mr. Valle. Thank you for all that you do. Why am I speaking today? It's about school safety. I think this is a relevant topic, especially right now, in light of what's been happening in our country for years, but specifically in May in Uvalde, Texas. Currently, right now, Idaho State Code 183302C says a person or an employee of the school district who is authorized to carry a firearm with the permission of school board trustees of the school district or the governing board. What this means is that you as the trustees have decisions to decide what happens on campuses when it relates to gun policy and gun-free zones or not gun-free zones. And that's why I'm standing up today, because I think it's important that we discuss school safety and bring up the relevance of moving away from gun-free zones on schools. So before I came up here, I tried to take as much time to be thoughtful about the process and get opinion. I met with Kurt Schenkel. He's the captain of the Nampa Police Department, and we discussed for about an hour. And one of the things that we went over is currently there was a 52.2% increase from 2020 to 2021 in active shooters situations. One of those was in our own great state of Idaho, Wrigley. Currently in our district, we have a SRO at every middle school and every high school, and only 2 SROs in the 13 elementary schools that we have. That's 6. They are over 6 and 7 elementary schools individually, with a $400,000 annual contract to the Nampa Police Department. Why is this important? Because we need to move towards more security for our students. Our elementary schools are the most susceptible. They're the biggest target. When you look at the statistics of which schools are being attacked, and that's what these are, attacks, and it's the elementary schools. This isn't the first time it's been brought up. Twin Falls School District just approved a $250,000 contract for 10 additional armed security guard hires on campuses, on elementary schools. And one thing, because I'm running out of time, is the rebuttal. Fences help, automatic doors helps, 2-step entry helps. It doesn't stop it. Uvalde, on May 22nd, the Uvalde security plan describes secured entrance systems for 2 of the district schools. The plan mentions fencing at Robb Elementary, designed to limit and or restrict access to individuals without a need to be on campus. These systems are in place, but they're not working. We need to start being proactive rather than reactive. The opportunity to have hired hands, hired guns on campuses, I personally see that we could have armed teachers, but I know that there is concern with that, and I know the police department wants to be a part of the discussion. They're willing to do training to see armed security guards on campuses, because there is a dire need at our elementary schools within the Nampa School District. And my time is up. Trustees, I appreciate all that you do, and I know this is another big consideration to throw on with everything else, and I stand for any questions.
So we're required on an annual basis to meet with our first responders and local law enforcement, ambulance, fire, all that kind of stuff. And so we do have, is it scheduled, or we are scheduling?
We are working on getting.
Yeah, we're working on getting that scheduled. So we will have discussion with the Nampa Police Department on that, and this is good information to at least have that discussion on. Trustee Taylor, did you have something?
No, I was gonna say.
Trustee Dahlia?
Yeah, I'm just wondering, did you send us that information though?
I sent Christy about 9 articles.
Okay.
I sent the FBI report that explains those numbers of increases of active shooters, those of which that increase on actual school campuses. Rigby, Idaho is listed on that as well as the funds allotted for the Nampa Police Department and the example of Twin Falls here in Idaho taking on that additional contract.
So we'll make that part of the public record.
Yes, and I have already uploaded it into the board meeting minutes, which I'll send those directly to the board this evening, the comments. And he did include the Idaho code, so I linked that because he had included that. It is Idaho code 1833 18-3302D subsection G instead of C. But I did include the correct one because that is what he said.
Yeah, absolutely.
Great information.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sebastian. Appreciate that. Okay, that is all I have signed up for public comments. We're going to move to our next section, which is consent agenda. Is there anything in the consent agenda that any trustee would like to remove for further discussion or action? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
I move that we approve the consent agenda.
A second?
Okay, motion's been made and seconded to approve the consent agenda. Any discussion on the motion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Action items. So we'll right to student handbooks.
Chair Griffin, trustees, before you tonight are the student handbooks from each of our schools, and I know that looks like a overwhelming amount.
It was.
It is. It helps to know that the handbooks are broken into two different sections. One section is a school-specific section that really speaks about the practices of the school and those unique individual practices that take place on those. And those you'll see in that. And then there's a district common section that has many of the policies and procedures that are common across all the elementary schools, all the middle schools, and all the high schools. Particularly with the decision that was made around standards-based grading, you'll see there is a change in all the secondary schools. That was put in the memo there. What it states about the grading practices of the district there, that there are grade reporting. So the standards-based grading information was taken out, grade reporting was put in, grade point average was put in. That really speaks about grades we put in Power School, and we encourage parents to go to Power School to access those grades. We show there that the A, B, C, D, F is in there as well as the GPA and how that's calculated. And so we would recommend as administration that approve the handbooks as presented. I'm happy to answer questions if you have.
Thank you. Any questions? Okay, I do. I have a question. I popped open probably half of these and kind of browsed through them, and they're all pretty standard, pretty similar. South Middle School goes into great detail with like 30 some odd thousand pages, and but I did open up the middle school handbook, and I'm looking at it's on page 9 of the middle school. It's just the middle school handbook, not specific to a school, but it talks about, it's an added text. It's flagging student library account. And it goes through the pop up and flagging the account. So my question though is, the note will pop up every time a student checks out a book. So Nampa School District encourages all parents to use common sense media to screen books and movies that their students are watching, reading, school related. Here's a link to Common Sense Media site, search for any title. So I went to that site. I've been to it before, went to it again, kind of look through a lot of the material that's on that site. My question is, why is the school district encouraging only one site? Because there's a number of sites out there that parents can go to look. So my question is just, why are we encouraging students to go to that one site? Because it is a left-leaning agenda type site, and I think a lot of parents would be like, so, just question.
Chair Kirkman, trustees understand that Chair Kirkman really could read numerous sites, and we would encourage our parents just to really do the due diligence on researching what they would want accounts flagged or not flagged. Common Sense Media is something that just came out with an original way to look at apps and how they were used in education, and movies and how they'd be used in education, and books and how they'd be used in education. So it's more of a historical context than anything. Happy to change that so that it's not, promoting specific one site, but rather maybe in general comment, just encouraging parents to do the due diligence and evaluate information. We'd be happy to make that change.
I think that would just be across the board better, rather than advocating for one particular site.
And Chair Kirkman, trustees, I'm sorry. That's also the same language in the elementary, so we would make that change in the elementary as well. I read that as well, had the same questions and thought it might be best just to allow the parents to have that, and make those choices.
Because some parent looking at that's gonna go, wow, this is the only site I'm supposed to go to. So, no, I appreciate that, and I appreciate the indulgence too for that question, but I think it would be best just to change that to a very generic.
Chairman, is that only, I'm sorry, and I just wanted to get my notes right, encourage the parents to do their due diligence, and is that only in the library section of the handbooks, or is that correct?
I don't know if it was, I don't know where it is exactly in all the handbooks, but.
Sure, Kirkman Trustees, it is in the handbook, in the elementary and the middle school handbook. I'm gonna look at Mr. Lou to see if it's in the secondary and have him check, but I know it's in a section that we added because there was the concern around the library books, and we want to make sure, let parents know that there is mechanisms for them if they have concerns to have their students' counts and flag to look at it. So I think there was a section here that we put under, I think it stands as its own section, so it's in different pages depending on the district common area for the middle elementary. And Mr. Lou, is it in high school?
I believe it is. We can certainly, those are easy edits.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the simple edit.
And I know we're gonna be working on the challenge book process tomorrow, but this doesn't necessarily have anything to do with that process. So this is more of a standalone is the way I read it. I just want to make sure I'm reading the same thing.
Yeah, sure, Kirkman Trustees, exactly. This is really just informing parents that there is a mechanism and encouraging them to do the due diligence, what they think is in the best interest for their students and their families.
It is on page 13 in the high school district. 13 of 32.
Okay.
Chair Kirkman, just a
Yes.
question for clarification. If we were to find something within the handbooks mid-year, say that needed to be changed or a policy was updated that affected the handbooks, would we be able just to make those changes at that time? Dr. Russell?
Chair Kirkman, Trustee Taylor, we have not had that situation come up in the past, but I believe anything could be done. If there was a change made in the handbook, we would just inform the parents that a change was made in the handbook. Typically, what we like to do is have those changes prior, so that once parents sign the handbook, they read it and know what they're signing. But I believe there's a possibility that we could do that mid-year if we had to, if there was a change along those lines.
And per Idaho code, you would also have to inform the students of that change and
Sure.
the staff.
Just making sure that.
Yeah, and I think some districts sometimes have to, because policy triumphs the handbook, obviously, but you usually make sure it's aligned. So if you were to do that, we would just amend it and then make sure you went through the process to make sure they're completely informed of that per Idaho code 33.518, and I can't remember what subsection off the top of my head.
Thank you, Chair Kirkman, Dr. Russell, and Ms. Lamont.
Chair, I have a question.
Yeah, Trustee Bell.
Chrissy, when did we receive, or when were you able to input this paperwork into the system?
With the board's changes in the grading and progress reporting, I don't know off the top of my head which day. I could look to see through emails, but I loaded them the same day and I sent a follow-up email to the staff letting them know that I had updated it. But because the board just recently took action, it did take some time to get those handbooks updated and then put in the packet. Due to that, so in the past, I think when they've changed some policies in that June and July time period, it is it's crunch time during August because we want to have handbooks before school starts. And I'm sure this is what Superintendent would tell you. I'm just speaking on this particular packet. With those meetings late and those actions at the end of July, it does make it harder when there's a lot of handbooks and that a decision's made that affects that. But I would think, I think I had them by Thursday or Wednesday.
Yeah,
Sorry, I'm so sorry.
Chair Kirkman Trustees and Trustee Valle, and appreciate Clerk Lamont for doing the work that she does to get these in. Just to give a little context, so typically at the end of the school year, administrators get together and review some of the handbooks and review some input and make some changes. Typically that's done in early June, late May, and then the handbooks are usually tried to be approved in July. Because of, and so elementaries have been done for quite some time. The secondaries, knowing that there was questions around the standard-based grading procedures, those did not get done. I think we gave Ms. Lamont a week ago Monday, so Tuesday.
And then if you click on, so I just figured out how we can tell. If you go to the handbook, It should say the dates, and I'm not sure if it will, but it should say here. There you go. I believe they were uploaded, so I received them on Tuesday and I loaded them Wednesday morning.
Right, and the reason I ask is because there's a lot of reading material.
Yeah,
And I tried to skim as much as I could. I'm glad the chairman was able to catch that. And I feel it makes me wonder what else are we not catching. But I appreciate the effort. I know what's going on and why. It's just so hard to make decisions when things happen very fast.
prior to, sorry, Chairman, permission
Sure.
to speak to the board. Prior to that, I did receive the initial email for the handbooks on June 27th. That was prior to any of the edits that had been made, that needed to be made. And then one during the agenda setting and also the directives from previous meetings, they were waited to be loaded at that point because there was a few more edits that needed to be done, some updating, just to make sure current dates were done, updated. And then also, because the grading process was an action item, we didn't want to load them and then have you guys read all that and then not understand what had been edited. So I do apologize for that.
A couple other little minor things I just remembered. I know one of them I was reading through, and I can't remember which one now, but Shelley Bonds is still in there as the secondary director, elementary, director of elementary. I don't know, and maybe he would like to keep Shelley in there.
Chair Griffin, trustees, no, reading through them as well, like Heidi Rom was in there too, and that's what Clerk Lamont was speaking to, because so many transitions to secondary principals, we had to go back and change some of those names. There was also some dates that we didn't meet that we should have caught earlier on, so it said the 21-22 school year, when it should have said 22-23 school year. So there are a few of those edits. I'm going through them again today. I caught a couple of those, and so I think we can probably send one more time just to make sure those names are cleaned up. But that also kind of delayed the process a little bit this year.
Well, and I think something like that, going through the year, if it's something that's not substantive change to the policy, I'm sure that that's going to be fine too, to make those changes. Going through the dress policy, I did notice, and this is probably just one of my ridiculous quirks, but language does matter, especially going through, the language like must and shall and will, and this may be appropriate and may not be appropriate. And I don't know if there's some consistency better with dress policy or really any of the policies. And again, this is probably just one of my quirks, but looking through some of those dress policies, it seemed a little ambiguous. Seemed a little bit ambiguous. So just maybe, I don't know if you're going through and maybe kind of take a look at that. But nonetheless, do we need to take action on this then? Yes, it is an action item. So
I think, Chairman, I think the superintendent would recommend that. The other thing is, if something passes that's not in that needs to align, it could also be added as an addendum. I've seen some districts do that, and I'm not sure if Nampa has done it in the past.
if it's a significant substantive change to the policy, not a change in a.
Right.
Yeah. Definitely.
Sure.
Please.
I move that we accept the handbooks presented with the change that Chair Kirkman brought forward on the common sense media in the elementary, middle school, and high school handbooks.
I second.
Okay, it's been motioned and seconded. Any discussion on the motion?
I just want to say that I'm going to vote for that, but there could be changes in the future.
Yeah. We can address those when they come up.
Yeah, when they come up.
If they come up. Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, next item on the agenda is excess revenue school distribution proposal. Dr. Russell?
So Chair Kirkman, trustees, before you tonight is a proposal to take action upon the excess revenue that the district received from the ADA enrollment change. This has been something that the board has discussed around a desire to have some of the funds go towards the students and the teachers to benefit the students and the teachers. And so what you'll see before you is a desire to increase the discretionary funding at each school, which is typically based on $33 per student. So you take this amount of students you have in your school times $33, and that's usually your discretionary amount. We would ask to double that to $66, and that would, at least in my time of being here in the district, have a substantial amount of money. I've never had that amount. I can't, even when I did calculations in my old school days, it was a large amount, so that's wonderful. And then the other portion of what we would propose tonight is to present, to use around $750,000 to roughly $1 million to allow teachers to request new furniture or replace some of the furniture in the classrooms that may be broken down, to allow them to have some nicer, newer equipment for them to be able to use with their students and in their classes. So overall, those would be the two areas which we would propose to use some of those excess funds, and happy to answer any questions you may have on that.
When you say old, broken, worn out furniture, you're talking about desks, chairs, desks for students, desks for teachers, all of the above?
Yeah, Chair Kirkman, trustees, yes, it would be desks for teachers. Perhaps they want to move into different tables or rolling type tables to be able to use different type of group works or classroom settings, and depending on how they want to arrange that. Maybe their own desk, how they want to have something different, they would have that ability. It could even be old bookshelves, book supplies, things where they have their old books, in the classrooms. A variety of things that would just give them that opportunity. I think what we would do is we would look through our schools and try to take an inventory so that we could do a larger order. Doing a larger order and ordering in bulk would allow us to be able to use the funds more efficiently. But we would start that process.
Would that also include technology like OWL cameras, things like that?
Chair Kirkman, trustees, so this is not necessarily technology unless that's a request from the teachers or the school. So they would have that flexibility if that's something that they wanted. We'd have to work through IT, but the desire was really start initially with part of this going towards the physical spaces, and then the extra $33 can go towards whatever the schools or the teachers desire. And then of course we have to look through IT. Just technology can sometimes you have to be very careful that we don't produce inequity, so that one school has a bunch of technology, another school doesn't, and this school ordered technology and this school doesn't, and then you start having some variance in what students can access and not access technology. Don't want to rule that out because if it's a need, then we definitely want to consider it for our students and our teachers.
Okay. Trustees, what do you think?
Board Chair, just permission for clarification. Sure. This money, Dr. Russell, this money doesn't, this is, and I'm just reiterating to make sure that my understanding is completely clear. This is our leftover funding, and these are not funds that expire at any time. So if we don't use these, then in 30 days, these funds will still remain. Like, I'm just checking for an expiration date.
Chair Kirkman, Trustee Taylor, that is accurate. This money does not expend. It is one-time monies. So this is money that we will not put into our operating budget because it only came from the one-time bump from the change to enrollment from ADA.
Chairman, I understand what you're doing here, and it makes sense, but I kind of want to see, when you look at doubling the money for enrolled students, you're looking at special education needs and people with disabilities. They cannot be treated in the same level with regards to the funding that we give them. And I definitely would love to see more money be given to the teachers who to help those students out with the needs that they have. I'm not exactly sure what the numbers are, but I would like to see this revised so that they could get more funding available. Also, did we talk about, and I'm sorry, the wording, I can't remember, having some funds for the helpers, for the people that help out.
Paraprofessionals?
Paraprofessionals to help, who are helping, these kids in need. That's what I want to see more of. So I'm kind of,
Chair Kirkman,
Sure.
Trustee Valle, I don't know if this would help clarify or ease anything, Trustee Valle, but paraprofessionals are part of the school community, and they would have access and be able to request things that they would need to help them with their job. Special education teachers are just as much part of the school. So if I were to put myself back in my old position at Reagan Elementary, where we had a autism program, those teachers would have to be able to access to these funds to be able to benefit their classrooms. They could ask for new sensory materials or a new sensory room or redesign their sensory room. So those are things that went in my head as I was thinking about how this having double the discretionary allocation could be used. So they would have opportunities for that. This doesn't specifically say that in there. It just allows the schools to have that ability to have double funds, and then allow the schools to decide and allow the teachers to decide how they best want to use that to apply to their students. So I'm not sure if that helps or not, but I just want to add that.
another question. Superintendent Russell. Could we handle another year or two with the furniture we have?
Chair Kirkman, Trustee Valle, yes. You could always handle another year or so. There's always going to be some furniture that will break, and we will have to purchase that. But feel that our schools could benefit from this one-time monies to not use old materials and allow newer materials to be available to our students.
Randy's gonna start throwing chairs at me.
Randy wants to speak.
So, Randy, do you have one?
I think Chairman, I think we should let for our trustee, since it is the board meeting, but you can let the director first, just because I think the trustee was gonna say something first. Since she's at the table, but that is up to you.
Okay, I can sit down. Would you mind if we want to go ahead?
No, it's okay. I don't mind if we go through it first.
All right, I want to address a few things, and then hopefully Rick or Cindy can talk about some of the special ed needs that we have and some of the funding we already have established for some of those things that we've been doing. One of the things we need to take into consideration is the way this district used to buy furniture for all the buildings is when we built a new building. So when we built a new building, and remember our conversation we just had, our last bond was when? 2007. So since I've been here, the most I think we put into any kind of furniture is probably around 100 grand for schools. We bought truckloads, probably 2 truckloads of chairs. Those went just like that. I mean, reality is our furniture is broken. Majority, if you go in any school, half that stuff is broken. It's not adequate. And this is one of the reasons we're trying to do this. It's not because we think we can't keep it going, but literally a lot of this furniture was bought in 2007. And we do not have a nest egg of money that we put towards furniture in this district since I've been here, at least in 10 years.
Okay. Trustee Taylor?
Yeah, Chair Kirkman, trustees. So when this came up, I wanted to see where we ended on this discussion because it was on the agenda earlier, and what we had talked about was just doing a special work session. And I just want to bring that back up because I actually feel like the heart and the conversation of the board is in alignment with what Randy is talking about. And I think we've talked about a lot of these initiatives. I think as a board, we're looking for, like when I hear us talking, we want a collective understanding. And I do think that there's been a lot of confusion surrounding these particular funds. So I just want to throw that back in, that I think that work session would just be very beneficial. We do so many now that I feel as if, but realistically, because I think really what happens in these conversations is they become a little bit convoluted because we have had a work session where we were able to talk about some of these funds. I think there was confusion when some of the motions were pushed, when some of the motions passed or failed. And I think that workshop would just be really beneficial, even if it was just a quick hour, really having these discussions one more time and getting to answer a lot of like the valid questions that Trustee Valle brought up that really just need an answer to move on, so that there's comfort in what we're doing with the money. Because like I said, I think the intention is there. I really feel like we're all on the same page. I think the questions come just out of general want and desire to understand, to ensure that we're using this money to the best benefit of our entire community, which includes our children, our teachers, our parents, our staff, our community members. I'm really tired. Sorry. I'm so sorry, guys.
Trustee Simpson.
Yeah, I mean, just hearing, I know part of the question was about special ed equipment and things like that. And so, if our superintendent would entertain us for a moment, if he could either talk about plans that are already in motion for that, or if Dr. Cook could talk about that, I would like to hear some of those things, just because I think that's helpful information as well.
I'd be open to hearing that too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Chair Cook and trustees, I would invite Dr. Cook to come forth, and she could happily answer any questions you may have around this.
Happily answer, absolutely. Members of the board, thank you for giving me an opportunity. Thank you, Trustee Valley, for bringing that up. I know your heart for special education, as the rest of you, because I've had a chance to visit with you. I would take all the money in the world for special education, let me tell you. But I do, just to your point, want to make sure that that you all understand that through ESSER money, special education was allocated ARPA monies, which was, again, one-time monies that we had for last school year and this school year. They expire in September, and the bulk of that money has done just those things that you're talking about. Looking for, what do our extended resource programs need? Sensory materials, you name it. Some things are more practical, like standing devices, things like that for our kiddos that have those more significant needs. We've done professional development within the school day, outside of the school day, and really that's the sole purpose of that money. So while I would gladly take extra, I just want you to know that there has been money allocated specifically for that, and our department has worked with Randy and Superintendent Russell to make sure that we're spending those monies in the way that we should, and make sure we're taking care of our kids, because those are my babies, and so we just want to do that. So if you have specific questions, I would answer them.
Yeah, I think, and if this were to pass, the $66, I mean, it would still be accessible by any student in any school. Kind of what that process looks like in that particular school through that administration or whatever case might be. I remember, I can't remember what school, but I know it was Principal was it yours, Sherman? The sensory board that was, they wanted a new sensory board and the room, it was just amazing.
Yes.
But they could have used another sensory board. And so that's kind of what I have in mind when it comes to using some of this money. But $66 per student in the school.
That's pretty exciting.
Yeah.
So any other questions? But just, we are keeping that in mind.
Thank you.
Chairman, for clarification purposes, I did just pull up the directive that was sent, that was required for me to do after each of the board meeting follow-ups with motions that pass at directives. The July 13th one that was sent out. For the July 11th meeting, the directive was clarification and information in the board packet. And then we also had the next directive stating that right here. Directives for the 2022 excess revenue school distribution. To have a special work session, budget and finance workshop, meeting priority, wants, needs, retention, opportunities for dollars to go back into schools. So you guys can have an open discussion, and that was with the follow-up and directives that were sent out on July 13th.
Sure. All right, well, trustees. Trustee
Can I
Simpson?
ask another question?
Absolutely.
I just, I'm curious if that $66 per student, if the need was higher, say at one school for furniture, chairs, or building supplies, would that also be able to be used in that? Like, if a principal says, hey, actually every single one of our classrooms needs brand new chairs. I'm not saying there is a building that's saying that, but if that's the case and that money could be utilized there, is that something that the district would be able, or is that just a mess of bookwork and craziness to try and allow that, something like that? Sure.
Go ahead.
So I do want to point clarification. So the schools are already getting $33. So when we keep saying 66, it's an additional $33. And the plan is that the original $33 is there, the principals would have that to do their normal operations that they do every year, right? There are those expenses that happen every year that aren't necessarily focused on this world, right? On this, all student focused, but this additional 33, what we would do is set it aside only for student activities, and they'd have certain restrictions based on what the board said. Is that here's the restrictions associated with this money. It may be we allocate a certain amount of money out of the furniture budget for each school, but then they need a little bit more out of that. They can. Those type of things are allowable. We can set it up any way you guys want to do it, and in our accounting system, we're able to actually put all that stuff aside. When I originally brought this up last month, you notice that number was a lot smaller. Working with Courtney over there, we've realized prices have gone up substantially. I mean, to put an example, one trailer of furniture is going to cost us about $15,000 just in shipping alone. So when you really talk about the inflation of what all this is, prices have escalated exponentially. So that's why we went out to almost $1 million for that. I don't even think it's going to be a drop in the bucket of what we truly need for these schools, honestly.
So a couple of things then to consider. One, this is not money that needs to be expended by a certain amount of time or by a certain time. It's not going to go away until it's expended, until we spend it. Money also, it's possible that it's allocated to and this is not anything that we have to decide here, but it's allocated to the schools, and I imagine that it could be moved around. We would expect, and this is a discussion we can have later, the money is allocated, it should be used. Do schools tend to carry over amounts to the next year in hopes that
we would put whatever restrictions on, and in my estimation, the goal of this is to actually get it in the kids' hands,
Absolutely.
students' hands. It would not be, we would tell people, hey, we gotta use it or lose it.
use it or lose it.
The one issue we might potentially have is the availability of things. So that's great that, so if we decide to wait, let's say till November to talk about this or whatever, some of these things are already 3 to 4 months out. So when you say, hey, we need to use it, well, we can't officially expend it until the actual product arrives on our door. So if we start to push it back, there's potential these students would not even have access to that until potentially next year. So depending on the items out there, that could create a problem. I'm not saying we need to do it right this minute. I agree with you. This money's not going away. But the shipping and handling and some of these things we are seeing is a big deterrent in a lot of things we're buying right now. We have to go to different suppliers to find the same things we're already doing.
So in light of that, in light of some of the things that have been brought up and discussed, and in light of the directive from July 11th, I think, is that what it was? For the trustees, what would you like to do?
Board Chair, can I ask a
Yeah,
question?
absolutely.
I'm gonna make a motion, but Nambi, I'm gonna look straight at you. I need my motion to be seconded before I can speak to it, correct? I'm just making sure.
That's not how we operate.
So how is it, can I speak to the motion before? I'm trying really hard.
But just know that I will second it for you.
Okay, so I can speak. Okay, so I'm gonna motion to table this until we can set a special work session as we discussed in July.
I second
Oh, thank you.
All right.
So,
Hold on. Motion's on the table. It's been seconded. Is there any discussion on that motion?
I still have a lot of questions.
Okay.
I just want to reiterate that I really feel like the heart is in the right place. I don't feel like anything that's been asked for out of this money is out of line. In all the conversations that we have had as a board, I think that collectively we're in the same space. We just had a massive bond presentation, and I think that financial literacy and understanding and collective understanding for this board is very important. And I feel like these are foundational conversations, and I feel like we've brought up a lot of questions and a lot of things that we want to do. So I do think that the work session is a great thing to happen, and that it can happen soon. Thank you.
Any other discussion on the motion?
Sure.
Trustee.
I know I don't need to do this, but I'm not gonna vote in support of this only because I feel like I'm okay with this money and I get through negotiations. I've talked and wrestled a lot more with these dollar amounts than any of the rest of you. But I'm not opposed necessarily to a work session. I just would like to get this money into our schools and to our students and facilitating those things as quickly as possible. And so I just want to make that clear.
And Chairman, can I?
Yes, trustee Dahlia.
You know, I understand where they're coming from, and I'm almost close to it. I just have one more question, and Randy left before he could answer it. Oh, there
He's
you go.
here.
Why didn't we?
Because
Figure you did, so we're good.
his answer to me kind of, and can I ask a
Ask a question, yeah.
If we were to take out the $1 million for furniture, how much per student would we have available?
So I just out of the top of my head, $450,000 is what we need for the $33 per student. So you're talking about $66 per student. I mean, a little bit more than that. So I'd say $70, $75 per student is what $1 million would do.
If we were to do something like that, and allow teachers to decide whether they want chairs or tables or whatever, and then you guys can, you have a question or you want
Yeah,
to?
like we've been talking about different strategies on it.
So is this something that we should, if we're gonna, maybe we should, let's vote on the motion, because that could send us to a work session where we have this discussion.
Yeah, no, that's totally fine.
Okay. Because it doesn't make any sense since we have the motion on the table. So the motion on the table is, the motion is to table this to a work session. It's been seconded. We're discussing any comment on this particular motion.
Sure.
Trustee Simpson.
I just, point of order. In trustee Baye asked a question and I feel like we have people in the room that can answer it.
We can
We're
continue the
here.
discussion here.
I mean, sorry, I'm gonna ask, I think you're making a decision for the board that we're gonna all vote necessarily yes on this or a majority, which I don't think we really know, at this point.
Well, the discussion was on the motion to table this or not. He asked questions.
Well,
So what I wanted to get to was to act on the motion to table it.
Well, his question though sounded to me like he might be ready if he had an answer.
I don't have a problem.
question,
If we want to
but-
continue the discussion, you're more than welcome to come up here. I mean,
We're here for you.
we can go ahead and come on up. We can continue the discussion. It might change somebody's vote.
We're gonna tag team this one if it's okay, because he has parts of the information and I probably have some as well.
Okay.
So, Chairman Kirkman, Trustee Baye, could you re-ask your question for us, just to make sure that we attend to it the best way we can?
My question has to do with the $1 million. If we were to turn it into money for students, added to the $66 per student, it would basically come out to 20 something or whatever it is. I can't do math.
32.
32. Thank you.
Smart.
And can we do something like that and allow the teachers to make decisions on the chairs, tables, or whatever it is that they need for their classroom?
So in reference specifically to the question on the chairs and furniture, that is an option, but the cost will be substantially higher. As you buy 10 or 20, there are no price break points. The shipping is also extremely high currently, and so you would be paying actually more for that product if we do not bring them together in large quantities. So the answer is yes, but there is a price to that.
So there's a catch to that because you may be bringing large quantities that you may not need. But at the same time, you may be paying, if you give a deadline to teachers, okay, tell us if you need any chairs and tables, and you have a set number, wouldn't you want to buy a set number instead of a large number just to get a break in shipping? I don't know.
So there's 2 points to that. You go ahead with yours.
So one of the ways we discussed actually allocating this, because we were looking at it itself as, okay, do we get an inventory here, here, here? Because we have 26 different locations we got to deal with, right? One of the things we were trying to do is, okay, what are the needs in the schools? Ask the principals, ask the teachers to be able to get that. One thing we want to try to do is at least try to standardize some sort of a table set up, because most of them use a 6-foot table that has, I mean, we had to do it for kindergarten. It was the exact same table we did in every single school. So majority of this stuff is going to be real consistent, and we can buy a truckload of it and get it at a much better price because 90% of the people are going to want that product. The same way with our chairs. We already did an analysis years ago what kind of chairs we like. It's an 18-inch chair, has everything we like about it. It works in our schools. Those are things we can buy if people say, I need a chair, here's a chair. Now, there might be some specialty things that you want a wiggle chair, you want something here, you want something else that would be different in your classroom. Those are the things we want to kind of gather and see, okay, how many people want this? And if that's the case, we can try to work with our different suppliers and get those. It is easy to do. We just need to create a mechanism for the teachers and everybody to decide what they want and to give them ideas as well, because that was one of the things we're looking at is what kind of things are out there. Because I think people could look at a magazine, but not necessarily see what things are out there. And one of the things that this money will allow us to do is also get potentially some creativity in our schools to be able to be those spaces that some of these teachers really do want. We just never had the money to do it. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So the short answer is there's lots of ways to skin it, but we're trying to look at the most economical way for each of our classrooms or teachers in our schools and obviously for the district as a whole.
Okay, any other discussion on the motion? All right, motion is to table this action item and schedule it for a work session, and it's been seconded. There's been discussion, so all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Aye. Or nay? Nay opposed. Yeah. 3-2. Okay. All right, next item on the agenda is information items. So we have the state, Greg, Dr. Russell, go ahead.
Chair Cook and Trustees, we have Dr. Cook is here tonight to just share some general information around the 2018 State Department of Education manual, what it is. She's going to share some of that information, maybe allow you to ask some questions, and it's likely that we may come back at some other point as an action item. I do believe there is a due date that this does need to be approved for us to be able to submit to the state. I think that's in November, but we just thought we'd start getting this out there for you so you can start understanding a little bit about it. And she's here to share some information tonight.
Again, yes, the Idaho Special Education Manual is based on the federal IDEA legislation. So within each state, they then take the IDEA and create rules and regulations basically about how we're going to operate in our state. So how we do things in Idaho is a little different than how they do it in Oregon, Washington, California, etc. So the Special Education Manual, I did not print for you because it's like this 300 something.
I'm almost done with it.
Okay,
I'm just kidding.
please read it, yes. So the last one adopted by our state was in 2018. I'm hoping that within the next couple of years, they'll do a revamp, which is just a good idea to look at what's happening nationally and in our state. So the Special Education Manual goes through child find, which is how we identify kids, and what our responsibility is to be seeking out kiddos that may have disabilities. It goes into what that eligibility process looks like, timelines, IEPs, all those components of an IEP to make sure that we are doing our very best job for these kiddos that just need that little bit extra. It goes through that. It goes through dispute resolution. So if there is disagreement between school and families, you know, there's a process for that. So it goes through facilitation, mediation, due process hearings. It gives some definitions about what does an autism diagnosis kind of mean, not diagnosis, sorry, category, like what kinds of things lead to that, how we determine if it's a specific learning disability. So of all the categories that kiddos can qualify for special education, it outlines how we get to that place. We have to do an IEP every year. That's a thing we have to revisit every year and should, just to look at growth of kids, where we need to shift things because kids change, right? And then every 3 years we have to reevaluate to determine if students still qualify for special education. Are their needs the same? Do they need the same services? Do they need more? Do they need less? So the manual just really outlines that pretty well. And I kind of like that it's online, so you can click to the pieces and parts that you really need answered right then, because looking around that book is breaking my back. So yeah, and then the other document, I think the link was in there, was that 2017 to 18 change. So it just outlined a few wordsmithing things that they changed for 2018. So We do have to, as we have only one returning board member, then we need to bring this before the board for adoption. And basically we're saying, yes, we are gonna continue to follow this, and please do, because it's tied to money. Last year, we got over $3 million for special education in the different little pots, and that's a lot of money. And that goes a long way for our kiddos in special education, so we can't really afford to lose that. So I will answer any questions that you have to the best of my ability. But like Dr. Russell said, this is something that we would like you to consider and then approve at your next board meeting in September. So when I get that November thing where I have to check that we agreed on this, we agreed that this is what we're gonna follow. So that's true.
There's 25 pages just in changes. That's,
Yeah, special education is an evolving organism.
Chairman, and I'm not sure if Director Cook was clear. Maybe I think I'm a little more direct is what I've been told by my children lately. But even though there's all those changes, the board they are not allowed to make any changes to this manual. This will be a consent agenda.
oh, yeah, no.
Okay, consent agenda, just because this is a state manual
No,
that
it's
you're
a,
required
yeah, it's a state.
Thank you for that clarity. No, you're great.
Chair Cook,
Yes.
permission to
Yeah,
address
Trustee
Dr. Cook. First, thank you so much for bringing this like a full month before you wanted approved. It always helps just to understand. No, it is so helpful, and I appreciate all that you do. When I'm out there as a trustee, is there anything more that I can do to represent you, your program? Is there anything else? We don't get you a lot up here. I really enjoy getting to meet with you. You make yourself available. But I mean, you're talking, people watch the meetings. So if there's any more that we can do, but like I said, I really appreciate it. But I just wanted to take that moment to ask just to know if we can be a better representation of you too.
Oh, that's a great question. I love that.
We can put you on the agenda every single.
Right. I'm not impressed.
If that's what you would like, I will go.
And if anything, once every quarter, come here and give us a report, because I would like to know more details about this. I know one kid, and I hate to give his name out because who was
This little cherub.
family member who, supposed to get his IEP.
Yeah.
Teachers knew about it, everybody knows about it, but it's like towards the end of the year, finally gets it. It's like, what happened for the rest of the year? And it's like, wow, where's that process? And parents get so frustrated, they don't believe in the system. And I know there's eventually one falls through, but I don't know how many will be falling through this, Do teachers actually pay attention to this? I know when my son was growing up, with autism, a lot of teachers didn't really understand the program, even though they had all the paperwork. We had all the paperwork. We gave him,
Right.
and it's like a constant battle.
It's a constant learning curve, I think, for all of us, honestly, because disabilities aren't black and white. And there are processes and procedures in place that can be frustrating at times.
And they're specific to each kid.
Yes, absolutely. Very specific to each kiddo. And back in the 60s and 70s, I would say there was a lot of stigma around a label or an identification as a student with a disability. I think we've come a long ways from that, but there are still some of that out there. So we need to be very, very careful. We don't want kids coming out of general education that don't need to come out of general education. So I'm sorry for your frustration, and I know that does happen. We try not to do that, but we try to do everything beforehand. We work really hard with our gen ed staff to provide intervention. And when we get to the place where we say, yes, they qualify, we know. It's not a guess, it's a we know based on all this data, based on all this information. So I get the frustration, but no.
We appreciate everything you do, though.
Well, thank you.
Seriously, it's hard work.
It is, but I love it. And as to your point, Trustee Taylor, when you're in buildings, make a point to go see those special ed teachers and paras and just tell them how much you appreciate them. That goes further than anything. And when you're in the community, talk about how amazing our special education teachers, paras, principals. I mean, they work so hard, and it's not about money, although I'll take the money. It's about feeling like you're being respected and that people appreciate the hard work that you do. So they do it. I've done it, and people don't say in education, especially special education, about money. It's about kids.
Yeah.
But sometimes appreciation comes in different ways. So just use your voice. I am happy to meet with you anytime. I will take you out to schools.
Chair, for permission, thank you. Totally agree with you to this day. This sped program at Nampa High, we started this a few years ago. They do all of my Christmas cards that I sent out from my company, which I told you. And I just don't feel like these things get highlighted enough. I just think that there's some really cool opportunities and things that go on in our schools that just never get talked about. So I just love that you have the floor. So.
Any other questions for me?
Not at this time for me.
Feel free to email me if you do have questions.
And again, thank you. You do always make yourself very available for us. Thank you so much.
It is appreciated.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda is superintendent search update. So we started, and Chrissy, Ms. Lamont, you can fill in the holes here, but we reached out to how many companies?
No, actually, we
Just go
haven't.
ahead, go ahead,
So-
then you. I thought you were-
Okay,
I thought we were doing that earlier.
Sherman, would you like me to lead this
Go ahead and
conversation?
lead the conversation. In fact, might as well just finish it up. too.
Okay. What the board was discussing is we had a special session just discuss qualifications moving forward. And let me just pull this up. I wasn't quite prepared, so I do apologize. Got me a little off guard. Here we go. So the board, oh, what's my minute? Okay, sorry. Okay, I just had to get my packet up. The board will solicit proposals for a superintendent search firm. The deadline for the proposals will be September 1st, 2021. The board will, oh, sorry, it says 2022. It does say that in the packet. Thank you. Once the board receives those, they'll begin the process and select a superintendent search firm in September. The board, I will be sending out the request for proposals tomorrow, just because we need to wait till we updated everything. Currently, I believe I was directed, once we went through this process after the qualifications, is to reach out to local, regional, and nationwide firms. So I pulled a list together, and I believe we have 6 firms for sure that we'll be sending out. Once I get those sent out, I will send you the list of them, including the draft email that I'll send out first thing tomorrow morning, and the deadline will be September 1st. Once we receive that, we'll schedule a meeting and we'll load those in the packet. And then I think the process will be, if you're going to interview all the firms that submit a proposal, and then select, or if you're just going to interview your top 2 or 3, depending on how many. Because there is still an option that once people, competitors hear that we'll be doing that, they might also send proposals in. So anyone that we receive by September 1st, they'll be included in the packet.
And so this is just the first step. It's just looking for a firm,
A third party.
a third party
To
that would
facilitate that.
facilitate the search.
So does Dr. Russell have to go to a firm, or can he just apply direct?
Once the board selects a firm, whatever process is agreed upon during your guys' selection, which will be community involvement, but it depends on what all they provide in their proposal. All candidates, including district, all candidates, any candidate that would like to apply and be considered will have to go through the exact same process once you guys agree with that with your firm. And then whatever process that is to apply and go through, it will be for all candidates, whether they're local, in district, or out of district. Yes.
Trustee Simpson.
I just want to also just let people know that this superintendent search update will be on our agendas moving forward, so that as we go through this large process and complicated process, like we will continue bringing updates
on a monthly basis.
Yep, this is the first of many to come.
If you do choose to interview some firms, which I'm sure you will, or at least have a conversation after looking at their proposals, that will all be done in open session as well. So your community and staff, whoever's viewing, will also be able to hear what they'll be proposing to provide.
And that provision will be the facilitation of the search. I just
Yes.
want to make sure
Yes,
that
they're
that
not,
is-
but your role is to hire,
Yes,
yes.
Chair Griffin.
yes.
I just want to thank Dr. Russell for going through this impact, like not just today, not just this conversation, but the way that Dr. Russell has stepped up, I have appreciated, and I genuinely have appreciated working with him. And so to speak to Trustee Valle's process, there's two things that I want to say that I love about this process. The first one is that this is something that Dr. Russell can reapply to. He can be reaccepted as our superintendent, but this does open up that candidacy, and I love the idea of this third-party firm. So I really appreciated that work that we did, because I do feel like this really helps us to eliminate, I'm really searching for my words here, but a lot of that rhetoric that we get from the community. Maybe help me find words. I'm looking for really good words. Yeah, and thank you. And on guys, I'm really tired, so searching for words. Just FYI, I've been working for like 3 days straight, everybody, out of my other job, or the job I have. But yeah, this is my other job now. Anyway, I just want to throw that out there, because what I have really, really loved about this process is the lack of bias in it all. And just looking through these firms and the fact that we're picking firms at random and we get to interview these firms, I really, really feel like this is healing for our community. And I don't know that I went in with that opinion, but after I've learned a little bit more about these firms, what they'll do and what they'll help this board do, I really am appreciating the process.
And it will be very transparent.
Very transparent, which I also really appreciate.
Okay. Any other comments, questions? All right, we'll move on to the next item, which is the enrollment report.
Chair Griffin, trustees, I believe a couple of months ago, there was a request to start putting the enrollment report in the informational section, just so that the board can have an understanding around that, which is going to be very important coming up here in the next month or two. The enrollment report you see tonight, it is accurate and it is not, if that makes sense. It's accurate that it's pulled from our student information services, but it is lacking our kindergarten enrollment. You'll see there's only 167 kindergartens enrolled, and that's just because kindergarten typically enroll late in the year, and we're going to start seeing that with registration starting this week. Those numbers will be trickulating in, and that's the big one that we watch every year is our kindergarten number. We want to see a number around 1,000 or more, and you can see it with 167. So that report with the overall student body rate, I think it's 12.6 is what that report's showing, just is not accurate, but it is considering where we are this time of year. Now, typically, what we'll do is when schools begin to enroll, our numbers tend to balloon a little bit, and then we start having to clean our rosters and start moving out the students who were enrolled at the end of last year but did not show up this fall. We typically ask our schools to do that within the first 10 days, and by day 6 or 7, we're pretty clean for the most part, and have clean books, and we have a pretty good number from there. By the end of Labor Day, we're pretty set, and then you'll realize, or you should know, that starts our first 10 weeks counts, those first Fridays, going all the way up to the 1st of November. So the enrollment part will be very important those first couple of months of school, determining our allocation for staffing.
Questions on enrollment report?
Actually, I do.
Hold on just a second. Trustee Pearson was
I was just wondering, is there any way, Mr. Russell, that we could maybe in the future, maybe get 5 years so I can compare how, if the enrollment's gone up or down, just a comparison?
Yeah, Chair Griffin, Trustee Pearson, absolutely. We could get you any kind of report you'd like. I can just email that to you in general if you'd like.
Thank you.
Yeah, you bet. I'm looking at Mr. Krebs and he's
Thank you.
He's shaking his head, yep. Trustee Dye?
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I know originally when I first started, I asked to see if we can incorporate the school capacity with regards to enrollment. And I really would like to look at that picture every time that we are given this report. That way we know how the schools are, if they're being choked or not.
Can I speak to that?
Sure, Government Trustees, I'd ask Mr. Krebs if he was be able to talk.
So we could do a school capacity, just a line.
Yeah.
That doesn't change, so we'll make it static and you'll have it all the time.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank
We'll have
you.
it on the first enrollment report.
Are you gonna have to
Thank
put
you.
percentages in there
We can do that. That's no problem.
And a flower.
too? All right. Any other questions on the enrollment report?
I think we could figure out
Yeah.
the person.
No, you can. You can.
Maybe we all need a lesson.
We'll make it a work session, maybe.
Next item is the finance treasury report, and there he is. I'm assuming that you're doing this.
I believe I'm still this guy, yes. So one thing I will say is you notice there isn't a lot of activity on there. Remember, most of our people don't start getting paid until September. The majority of our people in there, there are some big projects that we're working on, but reality is not even the encumbrances are really done yet because a lot of our new hires aren't even assigned in any positions yet. That's one of the things we're doing right now. The one thing I will tell you is we are working on right now to get the retention bonuses out, probably that first Friday in the February 2nd, September 2nd is what we're working on right now. HR is helping to pull that data, and we're trying to work on that.
Oh, Chair, sorry, Ruby, I just didn't hear you. What did you say? It's the date that you're gonna,
September 2nd
Thank
is what we're trying
I
to,
just couldn't hear.
yeah. It's either that Friday or the next Friday, but we'd like to do it the 2nd because that's when my payroll person said that would be the best for her. So I listen to her whenever she talks.
Is that it?
I believe so.
Any questions?
Mhm.
All right.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Angie.
Ruby. And now we have superintendent's report, Dr. Russell.
Sure, Kirkman and Trustees, just some updates today. First of all, the hiring update. I've been sharing that information with you on a weekly basis. I just wanted to add some light to that a little bit so you can kind of understand the current state. Right now in elementary, we have, I will say 8, because we have an offer that was just sent out this late after this afternoon, 8 certified staff opening still. Of those, 4 are classrooms. Of those 4, one of them really, if the enrollment doesn't come in, will be just fine. So that kind of cuts it down to 3. Just kind of share how important, where that number is. So it's a little high, but it's not incredibly abnormal. We're still looking for a counselor, some preschool. We actually could modify some of the things that we do and schedule there and cover if we absolutely had to. A couple of those positions are preschool and 1 is special ed. In the secondary, we have 6 special ed. I believe 1 just transferred over from another school, so I'll cut that down to 5, which is still a concern, and we're working on plans of maybe how to cover some of that. The math and the science and social studies, some of those can be covered with paying out extra periods. So again, 11 seems large, maybe not as big of a number. The classified in the elementary, we have 17 positions, but to put that in context, we were given more funding this year from the state for early literacy money. And what we decided to do after working with the principals is to open up more positions, classified positions to help with early literacy. And those were 14 positions. So you take those 14 away from the 17, we're really normally sitting at 3 openings, which is really good. So we did it, it looks larger, but in the context of everything, it's, we still want to be able to hire those, but it's maybe not as egregious maybe as the number looks. And then 9 in secondary is actually pretty common. We'll still work for and trying to get some of those folks hired as well. And so we may, as we hire and try to push that, we may need to have, if we have a special work session, we need to have an action item around approving a personnel recommendation if that comes up. But just wanted to give some context in general. The district is plugging away, it is working on that, and we are making progress every day. We make a little bit more. The second item there is just back to school. As you're aware, school is starting on the 18th. Our students are coming back. A very exciting time to be in schools. Teachers report on Monday. Again, a very exciting time. Our principal started last week, had some great meetings with them, and there's a little bit of that energy started, and that's a great thing. Really looking forward to the start of school. We have an update just to share as well. At the end of this month, on August 29th to the 31st, we are having the Steered Straight talks with all of our students and around the dangers of vaping, drugs, and alcohol. And we, on our August 30th, at Columbia High School, we'll be having a community night to invite our parents to. And so we would love to see if you're there. We'll want you to work with Clerk Lamont if we need to post a forum. I would love to see folks to come out to that and encourage you, if you're out in the community talking to folks, just to share that. We'd love to have them come. This is going to be a great night for parents to learn about the dangers of vaping and drugs and alcohol and what that does. And so just really looking forward to those 3 days.
Has there been any flyers or anything I haven't seen anything posted on the website or Facebook or?
We're going to start right now.
Okay.
I'm starting getting some information out. Mr. Keefe is here and he'll help us get some of that information out. We'll work on getting some flyers, and especially as registration in school opens up, we'll start getting that hard as our parents start registering for Parent Square. That was the other thing we're kind of waiting for parents to get.
So August 30th is the community night for parents. I'm assuming students also.
Students can come as well.
But the other dates where he's going to be in the schools.
He will be in the schools all day on the 29th.
Well, and so when you say in the schools, like, is he just going to pick a couple of schools to go to? Or?
We have a schedule set for him to go through all secondary schools, all middle schools and high schools.
Could you share that schedule with me? Okay.
I will share that out.
I'll probably,
yes, I'll share that out with all trustees. Get that scheduled out to you so you can see that. And you're welcome to attend those as well.
Yeah, you may just do a notice for all.
I'm going to.
I'm emailing you now.
Possible notice.
Thank you.
I also want to do an update around standards-based grading, and I'm going to have Mr. Yarborough come up. But before I do, I just wanted to clarify something. I know at the last meeting we sent out a survey around standards-based grading. There was some concerns from the community that some of those surveys were not received. I worked with Mr. Krebs, and he worked with our survey, our software company, and we feel very confident that we can determine what surveys were sent to what emails. So some folks' emails may not have been up to date. If folks did not have students enrolled in our district, if they unenrolled or sent them to a charter school, they would not have received a survey, and it was only sent to secondary students. So just for the record, would encourage anybody out there who maybe has concerns that they didn't receive a survey, would love to have them come see us and talk. We could share with them what email is on record, what it was sent, what survey was sent to, whether the survey was opened, whether the survey was completed. We have all of that data and we're able to pull that. And so just want to let folks know that I'm happy to talk through that so that we can make sure that we're being as transparent as possible and ensuring that folks are receiving our information. Mr. Yarborough is here just to talk a little around the standard-based grading update.
Hold on just one second. Trustee
yeah.
Taylor had a question.
Dr. Russell, I really want to thank you for doing your diligence on that and bringing that up here and letting us know that information, because I do think it's important. And I'm really glad in the community can know that you're taking that very seriously.
Yeah, I had the same question, and Mr. Krebs reached out to me and Dr. Russell and explained the process, and I was like, all right, I get it. That's why. So I do appreciate that explanation. And it went to my wife, and I don't think she got it. So.
Thank you. Thank you.
So I updated my email.
Chair Kirkman, trustees, Dr. Russell, thank you. I just wanted to follow up based off of board action from the last board meeting. Wanted to fill you in what we've done. The first thing we addressed a little bit earlier, the standards-based grading language in the district section of our handbooks. We worked with our secondary leaders and readjust that to what we had just previous into entering into our standards-based grading year. So the 17-18 academic year, that's the language that was in those handbooks. We pulled that forward. The second thing we've done is worked out a plan of how we will use Power Teacher Pro to be the grade book and communicating all grades for parents and students through Power Teacher Pro. That's where we will send them to check on their status on assignments, their status on their grade. We'll continue to push push parents and students that's where their grade will be. And we will do that on a traditional based grading model as we referenced in the handbook language. And then the other piece that is a little tricky was the GPA calculation that you see in the handbook language. That again isn't necessarily tied to standards-based grading. That's just the overall with weighted classes being dual credit and AP classes, and then the unweighted classes, if you will, are a regular 4-point scale for all of our non-AP or dual credit classes. So worked with all our secondary leaders. We're working down that road. We have teachers coming back to the building on Monday, and they have plans to work with them to get their grade books up and running and what that communication will look like. So Stan, any questions with that?
Any questions?
I'm impressed.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Yarborough.
And Chair Kirkman, trustees, the last update, I'm going to ask Mr. Stoffrey to come up. He's going to share with us some information around some construction updates, just so general things for the board to be aware of. around a disposal designee, and then just to discuss a little bit around the sole sources. There were some questions that we may have had around possible action items.
Perfect. Thank you, Trustee Kirkman and Board of Trustees. We have two things I want to share with you about construction. One of them is in correlation with the city. In front of Endeavor Elementary, there's a big project for roundabout on Kings Road in Victory. It does impact our students and the access points for Endeavor Elementary. We're working with the city, working with the construction group there as well, working right now on a way for students to walk that they can do so safely. We have, been told that we'll have a meeting this week to kind of go over that a little bit more. I met with the city today, and they're helping us out with potential options of additional flaggers. And so there's some really good support there from the city, but it is, I drove it today, it is quite extensive. It hopefully will be done somewhere between Thanksgiving to Christmas. So it's a good chunk of time. They did start 2 weeks early. We encouraged them to start as early as possible. And they did move up the timeline a little bit for us, but just information that it is going to be a challenge for our constituents who live in that zone, for our children, for our staff, for all entities are going to be a little bit challenged here for the next few months. So just wanted to make sure that you were aware of that and kind of bring that forward. We have been putting out a lot of information. We're actually going to do some routes that we will propose to parents of how to access the school a little bit better. And we're working in conjunction with the city with that information. So that's just one. The other one is to update you on one of the other major projects, which is the Nampa High Gym. Everything was going smoothly. We hit a little bump, and so we're about 2 weeks behind schedule right now. But it's something that we'll be able to handle. I've already talked with all the entities there, and it shouldn't put us in too much of a struggle as far as any of the athletics. That everything should be able to move forward. So those are the two major ones. If you have any questions for those, we'd be more than happy to answer about those two. Perfect.
So bus schedules around Endeavor. I know we had approved in the consent agenda, and I opened that and looked through some of those schedules.
They're pretty massive, yeah.
So all that has been,
I've worked with Brown Bus as well. They're aware of the needs, but at the time right now, they're also revisiting as construction changes and different accessibilities to different areas will change based on where they are on that project. They're going to work around that as well. So that's part of the meetings that were ongoing with all entities, is to make sure that we can find the most efficient and save as many minutes as we can to get the kids to school safely. Okay. Yeah, so they're aware, they're part of it, and they've been with us from the announcement of the project.
But we approved, what do they call it? The emergency, not emergency. I have to look it up. But
the safety
yeah,
bus.
Was that in there?
So those are
the
safety busing is the standard that we build off. There are emergency clauses that were inside of that if we have to.
But this is not something that
it's not something that would be included in that. Right? Those are your standard. What would it look like without any of these implement issues that are going on? And again, it's only a temperamental. I know it's till December, but it isn't the whole school year.
Temperamental, I think, was the right word.
Yeah, it is temperamental. Oh, purposely. So that's the construction update. I just wanted to let you know as well that currently in board decisions, they had named Mr. Jers as the one who would be the district disposal person that things would run through for under $500. Obviously, he's not there, so I'll be bringing up an action item to replace his name with mine, and also have some items to discuss from our food nutrition services that are needing to be disposed of. And then also we have a couple of other things from some of our band equipment in one of our sites that is met its time, and so we want to bring those up next board meeting. But I just want to give you some heads up on all those few things that will be coming.
Does that include the kitchen or the oven or the whatever?
No, because those are new construction.
Chair,
was that the right answer?
Well,
is that what you were talking about?
We approved the purchase of a.
Correct. It was a fridge.
Fridge.
Yep.
Is that going to be up and ready to go for school?
As we talked about, it's about a 6-month process to put that in. And so that's why it was so imperative that we did it early on so that we can get that in during the Christmas break. Oh, so we're piecing it together till then.
All right. Trustee Taylor?
And I could be really jumping the gun are you gonna hit a sole source update?
Yeah, I'm gonna do that next.
Okay, I couldn't, I was like, I just didn't want to miss it.
Nope, not a problem.
That was it. I just was making sure that I was.
I've been interrupted, and it's my fault.
No,
It's
good
on
questions,
track.
good questions. Anything on those 2 points before I jump into that sole source? Okay, so I first off, I apologize I was able to help and attend. I was out of town when you had some questions on that, so hopefully I can attend to those questions this round through. We have currently a system, about 85% of our HVAC systems are run off of what's called the Allerton system, and it's proprietary software, proprietary thermostats, and all of those components that make that work. We put together a sole source to move forward with the rest of the 15% that is on 2 different systems, to move them into one system so that we would have the ability to control and receive information and energy savings from the Allerton systems. The question I think that came into play is, how is that a sole source? And I think to hopefully answer that, I do have a document of why Allerton is considered a sole source. Essentially, they're the only company, ATS is the only company that can install, service, or have any of their equipment attached to software. It's proprietary software, proprietary components, which under Idaho code makes it available for a sole source. It's something that we have done in the past, and so it was a renew of what we have done in the past. I think another question that came up, and we met with our legal team, there was discussion. I think that there was potentially an idea that there was no discussion that happened before this. There is a series of communication that did take place. We met this past week, and everything is still in line according to the legalities of it. So there was no concerns brought up by our attorney after we met with him on Friday.
With the other proposal company that came in.
There is no other company.
That's what we wanted.
Yeah, there is no other company. And I can share this letter with you. It just kind of helps you. It might help you feel a little bit better about what the Allerton company and ATS, what their relationship is, and why we had the sole source for ATS. So I have one for each of you, and also for Ms. Lamont as well. So I'll just kind of hand this up, and you guys can look at it. And if you have any questions, I'll be more than willing to entertain those as well. I'm gonna do this teacher thing. You're gonna get asked.
So I just want to make sure, as far as the questions that have come up, that came up with this, as far trustees, is there any other? Does this satisfy the questions that have come up? It does for me. I appreciate the explanation. Sure. I appreciate that there was some miscommunication, and I'm glad it's all cleared up.
Yeah, I would say I apologize. I said I apologize for being there, but I was on vacation for the first time.
You don't have
So
to
I'm not sorry
apologize for being
there.
on vacation.
Yeah, I hope that we stay away from sole source companies. I think there's enough technology out there that eventually, there's going to be a second.
Well, one of the challenges we do have to answer that, Trustee Valle, is when you get duality of softwares and maintaining 2 different softwares and 2 different programming, it does become a burden. There are some things in there that we don't do it very often. This is one of the few that we do. So you're right, we don't try to do it very often, but when we do it, it's because we've done our work on it.
Awesome, thank you so much.
Yeah, I really appreciate you coming back with that. And I really think that it was just a missing link, but we are glad you went on vacation.
Thank you for that. Appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, any other, I guess the next item on the agenda is possible agenda items. Is there anything that the trustees would like to see or need to see on a future agenda? If there is, like we always say, send us an email. We'll get it on the agenda. Dr. Russell, anything else from you?
Sure, Committee Trustees, that is all for tonight.
Okay, at 8:49, we are adjourned.